Hey everybody, it's Trags, Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle War podcast powered by our good friends at Prize Picks and CLNS Media. Back with me on this episode of the Jungle War pod is Jay Morrison, does an outstanding job along with James Rapine for SI.com and BengalsTalk.com. Follow all of their material there. Jay, I want to bring up, first of all, in this episode of the Jungle War pod, what happened with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and how it shaped everything else that happened, or more specifically, and to the angst of Bengal fans, did not happen in free agency. How do you think the way they handled the signing of those two-star wide receivers impacted the rest of roster building to this point?
I think it had a huge effect, and it has nothing to do with the amount of money they gave those guys and not having anything left. It's all about the timing of it. And so if they get those guys done before the legal tampering period opens, you've probably got a starting caliber guard. Now I know Lucas Patrick he started in this league, but they could have went out and got a higher quality guard. They could have addressed some other positions. And it just felt that whole negotiation put them so far behind. And the weird thing is, it was Friday of that first week of free agency when the news broke that, hey, it's close, it's about to happen. And then it happened Sunday night. It's like, if it was that close, just push it over the edge, just get it done so that you can have some sort of plan besides wait and see going into free agency. I thought it was a good move. We'll see whether they can win putting all this kind of money into those three guys on offense, Chase, Higgins, and Joe Burrow, obviously. But that philosophy aside, just if they get it done, they could have went out and got maybe two guards and another edge rusher. All these edge rushers were going off the board at reasonable 1 year, $7 million, just like they signed Osai for. They could have went out and got another guy on the outside. I think they dropped the ball there and not getting it done before the start of free agency when they were close anyhow.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't understand. If you were that close to begin with, like you said, they could have just pushed it over the edge. And I'm sure there was some last minute wrangling in terms of the way the guaranteed money was going to be structured and the impact. And Andre Parada had an interesting tweet in his analysis of how the way the Bengals structured the guaranteed money to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins really cost them in terms of their ability of what you just said, Jay, the ability to go out and sign some free agents. By his estimation, the Bengals cost themselves between $10 and $12 million in cap space in the way they structured those contracts. Can you go into detail? And I know James Rapine also had some terrific analysis of this, how that impacted what they were not able to do in terms of perhaps using it in free agency.
Well, I mean, yes, on the surface it impacted, but really it's moot because by the time they got the deal done, it didn't matter if they had structured it differently to have a bunch of cap space because there was nobody left to spend it on. But I was surprised. I thought that they would, you've got the hit for Jamar for the 5th-year option, and you've got the hit for T. Higgins for the franchise tag, and by signing them to an extension, you could have spread those cap hits out and actually had less cap hits for both guys this year, giving you more money to spend. And maybe that's why they did it that way, because they knew they didn't need the money to spend because everybody was gone anyhow. And so both those guys have their original hits for this 2025 season. And so I don't know. I made the joke that there's never there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And I was like, I don't know if that's the case in this situation. They should have done the right thing about a week earlier.
Well, without getting too deep into the weeds, but we're already in the jungle, no pun intended, we might as well go a little bit further. The Bengals don't like to kick the can down the road. They have said that when on the very few occasions that they've actually spoken about contracts. They do not like to kick the can down the road. So if they don't have to spread the money out because they're not going to use that money now, I guess their attitude is, let's just pay him now so we don't have to have that cap hit hanging over us later. Is that, in layperson's terms, the best way to describe it?
Yeah, because you had all that money that could have been spent elsewhere, but you didn't. You had nobody left to spend it on. So, yeah, why not make it right now, make it more immediate. And that has always been their philosophy. And Duke has said it so many times that we're not going to sacrifice 1 year for this year, but we're coming up on 6 decades of the franchise and there's no title yet. At some point, maybe try something a little different.
So the diametrically opposed philosophy to that is what Howie Roseman, I keep going back to the Eagles, what he publicly said on the record: we will have one bad year. We will sacrifice that one bad competitive year in terms of at least salary cap structure, if it means having a more aggressive roster to go and build a Super Bowl champion. To me, you couldn't have two teams or two organizations more diametrically opposed. Now, the Bengals do have pieces, and I do believe that they can make a run if their defense plays to a higher level with similar pieces that they had last year. Did they vastly improve their defense? TJ Slayton is a very competent defensive nose tackle signed to a 2-year, $15.1 million deal, I believe it is. But does that really make you that much better? I don't think so. And Trey Hendrickson, I want to move here on to Trey Hendrickson, Jay, and how everything that's happened to date in the offseason, the signing of Jamar, the signing of T, and not signing anybody else, how that impacts the Trey Hendrickson negotiations if they are ongoing, and him publicly saying that he will not play under a $16 million salary this year. How do you think all of that impacts the way Trey's going to go about this offseason?
Trey maybe believes that right now. I don't know if it comes to it, if that would be the case. It's tough for any player to sit out a year, especially at his age, and then come back and be better. And if he sits out the year, then you're right back in the same spot next year. It's not like you automatically get to hit free agency next year. If you sit out this year, the Bengals would still own your rights for another year. So you're basically talking about, if you're sitting out, you're basically threatening retirement, which that happened last year, and then he pushed back on whether that was actually what his agent meant to say. But I think this is another situation where the Bengals need to do the right thing. I'm not saying I was on board with them trading him and, get a 2nd-round pick and another day 3 pick and just go from there and rebuild it. But if you're going to go that approach, you got to back it up. And they didn't back it up. They signed Joseph Osai. There's no other edge rushers that they signed, and they struggled to get any kind of real pass rush last year. You let Trey Hendrickson walk out the door, you are starting from scratch. I know they're high on Miles Murphy and the greater volume of snaps. I think they're going to see more production from him. They do think Osai is ascending, and I agree with that. But you still can't go into the season with that as your and they won't. There'll be pieces in the draft. But at this point, you've kind of painted yourself into the corner of what you have to take in the draft, and you paint yourself into the corner where you need Trey Hendrickson. I don't know that a trade is on the table anymore. Maybe a team steps up and offers a first right before the draft, but it feels like they're I don't want to say stuck, because it's a very good thing to be stuck with, but I fully expect to see Trey Hendrickson on this team this year, and maybe don't give him a 3-year extension, but give him a bump this year. It's just kind of a good faith, we appreciate you. What Duke said, yes, he has outperformed his contract. Reward him for that. Keep him not just keep him in Cincinnati this season, keep him on the field in training camp. All the biggest storyline around this team outside of personnel is faster starts. And you don't want to go through what you went through last year with Jamar Chase and sitting out with the hold in. You don't want to be dealing with that with Trey Hendrickson. Get his situation under wraps, and then hit the ground running in OTAs, in training camp. All signs pointed to week 1, and finally have a good start with this team.
So what I don't understand, Jay, and we're on the outside looking in at negotiations and their philosophy. But if you're going to sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you're going to go for it on the offensive side of the ball, you only have one piece where you have to go all in on the defense. Mm-hmm. And you do have the space to do it. From my understanding of their cap space and the cash that they have available, you do have the ability to go out and do it. If you're going to be all in during this Joe Burrow window, why not be all in? To me, that's the fundamental question at this point.
Well, see, I think the issue here, and it's kind of my thought process as well, is I don't have any doubt that Trey Hendrickson's going to be a beast again this year, but he is. He's one of these defensive guys where it's all about freaky athleticism and yeah, there's some positions where you feel good they can play under 30s, but you don't see a lot of edge rushers doing that anymore. And it's a lot to commit to a guy who could. And it's not a knock on Trey. He works his butt off. He's one of the hardest workers. He's in great shape, but those guys don't just gradually decline. It seems like those edge rushers, it's a cliff and they fall off. And if you commit 2-3 years to that, then you really kind of hamstrung yourself. And I think that's what they're thinking is they would love to have Trey Hendrickson on the short term for more money. I think Trey Hendrickson wants long term more money.
So, and my retort to that is, again, coming back to a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, they're willing to take that risk, that gamble, if it means A, having that player on your roster the next year, and B, sending a message to the rest of your roster that we're all in. And sometimes, and I'm really kind of be a little bit obtuse here, but sometimes I don't ever get the sense that there's urgency in the Bengals organization. Certainly there is with Burrow. I don't think anybody who has covered him understands he plays with an urgency and at a level of intensity that is pretty much unmatched. But throughout the rest of the organization, I don't get the sense that there's urgency. You go out and sign Trey Hendrickson. You get the 2 deals done with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and the details of their contracts aside. You go out and do all of those things. The fact that you didn't bring in any free agents at least sends that message that, hey, we're bringing back the key pieces that we need to make a Super Bowl run. That's the way I would look at it.
And the part of it, too, is, we talked about it when they let DJ Reader go, and he was the heart and soul of that defense. And that it's not just what they do on the field, it's what they mean in that locker room. And you have a lot of young guys that basically worship the ground that Trey Hendrickson walks on. And if you lose that guy in the locker room, yeah, they feel great about McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins and those young guys coming into their own, but that'd be a big hit to lose a leader like Trey from that group. And what you said too, I think ripples through where it sends a message to the locker room. I just don't think it's one you want to send, and that's why I'm in favor of. I mean, they would never do it, but just double it this year. Make it, instead of 16, say, hey, we'll pay you 32 this year, and then you can hit free agency next year. Do something like that. But the Bengals are never going to pay someone that kind of money when they don't have to.
Well, that's the thing. They don't normally do that if they don't have to. I think 2 years, $60 million with $40 million guaranteed. I almost think, and the Bengals could easily get away with doing that with $40 million guaranteed, and maybe a third year throwaway. Both sides know they'll never get to the third year, but you throw it in there anyway, so you can avoidable years, just so you can say 3 years at $90 million and $50 million guaranteed. Trey signs that tomorrow. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But we're not the Bengals. We're not Katie Blackburn or Troy Blackburn. That's not the way they do business, and that's just the way it is. Speaking with Jay Morrison of SI.com and BengalsTalk.com, covering the Cincinnati Bengals. Want to tell you about Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Springtime is here, and that means baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. On Prize Picks, you can also mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The second half of the basketball season is also here, and the push to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Jay Morrison of SI.com and BengalsTalk.com. I love Pick of the J, or Stat of the J. Sorry. I was on my Prize Picks read, and that was in my mind. Anyway, I love Stat of the J. And your two Stats of the J recently on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Tell the audience, Jay, what went into coming up with those ideas about where Jamar and T could be in terms of Bengals history by the end of their current contracts.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody remembers the quote Jamar had on draft night saying he's coming here to break all the records, and he's broken a lot of the single game and single season records, but he's only been here 4 years. It's going to take a while to break some of Chad's career records. So I thought, well, now we know he's here 5 more years. Let's extrapolate the numbers and just say take what he's averaged every year of his career. So it's like 99 catches, 1,350 yards, 12 touchdowns per year, and just say if he stays at that mark, when would he pass Chad? And it was surprising. He'll have that touchdown record by the middle of what was 2026, I believe it was, or 2027, and then it'll be later in the contract that he'll catch him in yards and receptions, and it's remarkable to think about. But he'll still, by the time his contract ends, after this current contract ends after the 2029 season, he's still only 29 years old. You're still talking about a receiver receivers are another one of those positions where it can go fast, but I don't think Jamar is going to be one of those guys. I think if he wants to, he can play well into his 30s. And then T too, T's numbers are his numbers aren't as good, and he's been hamstrings because he's missed some games, but I took his, and he's going to be a top 5 receiver in Bengals history if he just stays on his current pace through the next 4 years of that of his contract. So I thought it was interesting that to see when it would happen, when Jamar would break these records. And then just today, I was like, okay, well, forget about Bengals. Let's look at NFL history. How long would Jamar have to play on this current pace to pass Jerry Rice's records? And we're talking 2036, 2037. I mean, it's just, and you guys all know it's been remarkable what Jamar has done the first 4 years, and he has to do that for another 12 years to catch Jerry Rice. It's more of a testament to what Jerry Rice did in his career than what Jamar has done in his first 4 seasons. That Jerry Rice did it in an era when the receivers didn't have the luxury of the pass happy game that it is today. So it would be fun, amazing for Bengal fans to see Jamar Chase in stripes until 2037, but I don't know that we're going to see that happen.
Remember, I asked last week, Jay, and I'm going to ask you about that press conference in just a bit, but I actually asked Jamar, maybe it was T I asked, and then Jamar chimed in. Can you see you both of you playing together for the rest of your career? And Jamar laughs in a way that only Jamar can do. He said, well, we're together for the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And in other words, he doesn't want to think too far down the road. But that's one of the things about a contract or dual contracts like this. I think a lot of Bengal fans and me as a reporter view them together. And everything about them, even though they came in, T came in the 2020 draft and Jamar a year later, I just see them as a single entity in Bengals history. And I think there's something very unique about that.
Yeah, there absolutely is, because you think of the greats. I mean, Chad and TJ were kind of a duo, and then even Carl Pickens and Darnay Scott. When you have that other guy that you run with and you play off of. Now, I don't know where the friendships were with those guys. I didn't cover those teams on a daily basis like I do now, but it is remarkable. And I thought it was a really good question you asked, and I wanted to follow up, but those press conferences, it's so hard to get it in, and then it went in a different direction. But I was gonna ask, like, do you guys forget next 4 years? next 40 years, do you guys see yourselves still being really good friends? Because it feels like that
It
kind of
does.
bond has been forged. And I could see those guys in their 60s sitting around playing chess or doing whatever they're doing and still being really good friends. I think it's something special that's been built here, not just what they've done on the field, but what, like what Jamar said, it's they've just come to appreciate each other as men, not just as players.
We don't always get a chance to bring fans inside the press conference room or bring them inside. What we try to, we bring them inside the locker room to kind of paint a picture. What's the atmosphere like? What are some of the intangible elements of the atmosphere like inside the stadium? The reason I bring this up is I thought last Tuesday it had a Riverfront Stadium vibe to it. The white cement brick mortars all around us in that room, which to the Bengals' defense, it's a alternate media press conference room because the current one is under construction. But I don't know if you got that same vibe, Jay, that I did, that it was kind of low key in there. I expected more of a buzz, and I don't know, for two guys signing those types of contracts, it was pretty low key. Maybe that's just their personalities too.
I was just going to say, I think they set that tone. Zach gave his opening statement, and then they walked to it, to the dais or the table, whatever it was. And T kind of started off with clapping, right? Like, let's go. But it just, for guys that just signed contracts, those kind of contracts, there wasn't that giddy nature to them. And I think they wanted to set that. They know that they broke the bank, but they also know that it's a team game, and they don't want to sit up there and act like, yeah, we're rich, and start talking about all the flashy jewelry they're going to buy and what they're going to do with the money. They kept it on football and friendship, and I do think it could have gone in a totally different direction had they done that. And instead, like they kept the focus on each other, the group, and even T tearing up, talking about his mom, and Jamar talking about his college coaches, and then the crazy amount of shout outs to Rocky Arsenault, the agent. It was just it was very low key, and I think that's the way they wanted it. And I don't know, it was so much the setting around us as it was those two guys at the front of the room dictated that.
Ever wanted a fish tank in your wall?
No.
Have you ever done?
I'm anti-pet. I never want. My whole philosophy is if the thing can't talk back to you, then I just don't get the point. And we have a cat. My wife loves cats, but I've never wanted a dog. I've never wanted a cat. I sure don't want fish. There's at least you can interact with dogs and cats. Fish just do their own thing. And no, I've never wanted that kind of luxurious entity in my house. Expect fish. It's just never. Seems like they're more trouble than they're worth.
Okay, when he said that, I'm like, oh, that is so Miami.
Yeah.
And both of them, I believe, had made the trip up from Miami to make that press conference, sign the deals on Tuesday, do the press conference, and then go back. But it really had that Miami vibe. That one moment that T. Higgins said that's what he's going to do with his money. But anything else stand out to you from that presser?
No, that was about it. I love the way they approached it, and it sometimes those can go off the rails, and they went over 30 minutes, and especially when something goes that long, it can go off in these weird tangents. And I think they did a good job. I think the media did a good job of keeping it on task and keeping the important things important. And it's just, I say it all the time that in this business you can't root. You have to be objective, and you have to take it from that approach. But as a human being, you like to see good things happen to good people.
Yes.
And T and Jamar are good people. And so I was very happy for them that they were able to enjoy that day, knowing that the next 4 years they're going to be together and they are going to be paid handsomely to do it.
Jay Morrison, you are good people. You do a fantastic job, as always, covering the Cincinnati Bengals for BengalsTalk.com as well as SI.com, along with, of course, your colleague, James Rapine. Jay, thanks so much for taking time.
Great to talk to you, Trags.
All right, he's Jay Morrison. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags, and this has been the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by Prize Picks and CLNS Media. Until next time, Keep that jungle roaring.